What's good, y'all? It's the one and only King Cal 516 live in the mix, and this is the Switch Flames podcast. So Lakers coach Frank Vogel is on the hot seat, according to reports. Once again, Lakers coach Frank Vogel is on the hot seat, according to reports. We're going to get into this, but before we do, make sure you guys check out the website, www.switchflames.com. Hit us up on Twitter, @SwitchFlames. Check out the Facebook, YouTube page, @SwitchFlames Podcast. Please hit the like and subscribe. Comment what you think about Frank Vogel being on the hot seat. Now, I want to remind you guys, the last time we had a podcast episode talking about a coach on the hot seat was Luke Walton, which is recently. And then not too long after that, he was fired. So I'm not saying because, we're bringing this to your attention that that's what's going to happen with Frank Vogel. But I am totally understanding, and I totally see the writing on the wall that this report definitely has to be true. Now let me break it down. First of all, this report is kind of generating from the Stein line. Mark Stein is a reputable source out there in the world of basketball. I've followed him for a while, and I've seen a lot of things when he reports that you see end up being true. So the buzz really is, there's rising buzz in coaching circles about the pressure mounting on Frank Vogel, giving the original 10-10 start that the Lakers have had. But up until last night, they lose to the Kings in triple overtime, so the Lakers are now a game under 500. And it's a big lack of flexibility on the roster to make major changes. And so usually in the sports world, you'll see the coach go first when teams are in turmoil, not producing the way they're expected to be producing. Management, a lot of times, they'll come in and the coach will be the first to roll. So I truly believe Frank Vogel's on the hot seat. Now, to build this up a little bit more, you got to think about this. In the offseason, Frank Vogel, this season was going into his last season. Then all of a sudden, it took a little bit, but then all of a sudden, you heard he got an extension, but it wasn't really specified what the extension was. And then later on, we come to find out he only got a 1-year extension. That told me everything I need to know. First of all, you don't want a lame duck coach, so you have to give him an extension. But when you gave him an extension, you gave him 1 year. This is a coach who, in his first season, won the NBA championship. Last season, obviously, they didn't do as well as expected. But here's the thing. If the Lakers were sold on Frank Vogel, they'll tie him to AD's timeline. AD is their younger superstar. He re-signed for multiple years in his contract. So if that's the case, you would re-up AD. Because AD re-signed a long extension last year. You would just tie Frank Vogel to AD, but you didn't do that. You only gave him 1 extra year, which means you basically tied him to LeBron James. But LeBron James is on the latter end of his career, on his way out. So that told me everything I need to know about what the Lakers perceive Frank Vogel as the future or not in their organization as far as a head coach, which tells me they weren't 100% sold on him to offer him that long term. So they probably went into those negotiations with the ideology of, hey, Frank, we just want to see how it goes with all these changes this year, this one season, and we'll come back next year so that you're not left hanging as a lame duck. And if things go right, then what we'll end up doing is extend you long term then. So basically, this is a year that gives the Lakers a little flexibility on, hey, you know what? If it doesn't go to their liking, they'll ease off Frank Vogel. They'll still owe him 1 more year. But they want to be locked into this long-term contract that they feel obligated. They have to stay with him because they don't want to, pay off 3 or 4 years, of a head coach contract. They will only have to worry about the rest of the season and next year. And because of that gave me some idea that if the Lakers didn't start off good and if the Lakers struggled in a good portion of the season, Frank Vogel's job might be in jeopardy. So now that these rumors are coming out, obviously the Lakers haven't started off too hot. They had a very easier schedule in the beginning of the year. So what that means to me is that their schedule is only going to get harder, right? They're going to end up playing a little bit more road games because they start off with a lot of home games. And so the opportunity for the Lakers to get off to a great start was there. The NBA gave them handouts. Basically, they had a lot easier opponents. They didn't take advantage of that. And the schedule is only going to get harder from here. Because of that, if you're Lakers management, you got to be thinking about the next move. And last night, they lost in triple overtime to the Kings. The Kings being the team that recently fired their coach and now has Alvin Gentry. What I would say about the Kings, luckily they had Alvin Gentry, who has some form of success as a head coach in the NBA. Now, the problem I have with the Lakers, if you get rid of Frank Vogel, who's going to replace him? Are you going to put David Fizdale in that position? I don't know if David Fizdale is the answer. And that's my dilemma. You have John Lucas on that coach staff. You have a few guys on the coach staff. None of these guys are proven successful NBA coaches on that higher level, at the highest level. None of them have been proven to be successful NBA coaches. Now, it's not to say that they couldn't be the ones to turn around his team. What I'm saying is, if you're the Lakers, that could be an issue of maybe why you don't pull the trigger. Because in most cases, most teams do not bring in a brand new person in the middle of the season. You want to wait till the end of the season before you start bringing in a new person into the fold from the outside. So a lot of times you're going to fill these spots internally, and I just don't know who they're going to fill internally. Who's the best option? I don't know. In my opinion, I mean, I know some people might think I'm crazy. I believe Rajon Rondo's the best option as far as who's on the team right now. I actually believe Rondo's the best option. But Rondo's signed as a player, so I don't think the Lakers are going to be unorthodox and think outside the box like that and make Rondo the replacement if they do fire Frank Vogel. But I think he's the best option. I like David Fizdale. It's just that on the highest levels, he hasn't proved that he can be a successful NBA coach. Does he have the potential? Sure. But this is the Los Angeles Lakers organization. There's a lot of pressure there. So if you're going to make that change of Frank Vogel, you have to go with somebody you are 100% sure can right the ship. Then there's no point on getting rid of him. So I think the Lakers situation is a little bit more tough to deal with than the Kings because of expectations. The Kings don't have these kind of expectations like the Lakers do. So the Kings can make that change and not necessarily worry about it and then deal with that in the season. Hey, if this guy works out, more power to him. We'll resign Alvin Gentry. If he doesn't work out, all right, cool. We'll move on from him and get our guy then. This Lakers, you have expectations of a championship this season, so you don't have that luxury to mess around and just replace Frank Vogel and, see how it goes. You got to replace him with somebody you know can get the job done. You're dealing with a lot more, as the Los Angeles Lakers organization that other teams may not have to deal with. So this is interesting. We'll see how it all unfolds. Frank Vogel's on the hot seat. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks, if the Lakers let him go or not. My guess is I think he'll survive this season. You know what I mean? I think the Lakers will eventually get a run. But if it gets too hot and it goes too south continuously before they can get to that point, absolutely, I believe he can be gone. With that said, it's your boy King Cow 506. It's been a Swiss Train Podcast, y'all.